she gives me a big hug and starts crying. And look, I'm a softie. I started crying with her, and we literally sat in the parking lot on the ground in the gravel for probably 15 minutes. And we had some pretty deep discussions. She cried. I cried with her, and her husband was there as well. And I want to say this, that he's a very stoic individual, and he stood there with his hand on both of our shoulders and was a part of everything. It was one of those moments you don't forget.
She knew before they told her. A mother's intuition is not a metaphor. It is a warning system that operates beyond logic, beyond evidence, beyond hope. When Christine Elmore received the call that a body had been found near Horn Island, she didn't wait for confirmation. She called Josh Gil of the United Cajun Navy. She told him she needed to find her son. And then she went to the coroner's office to see what they had done to him. The visual anchor for this case is a mother sitting on gravel in a parking lot, not a conference room. Not a sterile coroner's office, gravel. The ground. Because that is where she collapsed when she heard the news. And she stayed there for 15 minutes. That image of a mother on the ground, unable to stand, is the only truth in this case that no one can dispute.
She knew. Again, mother's intuition is strong. It's very strong. In her heart, she knew. As far as what she was saying, why is always the question, you know? She asked God, why? And the rest of the conversations were just, memories real quick. And I'm assuming everything was just flashing in front of her eyes because, again, it's the beginning of the hardest time of her life. Losing her son.
Before we go deeper into what the evidence actually shows, make sure you're subscribed to Crime Nest Media. Because we don't just cover the story, we follow the facts. Nolan Wells was 19 years old. He went to Horn Island on July 4th with friends to celebrate. He never came back. The search for his body lasted days. And when it was found, it wasn't in the water. It was on the shore, half in the sand, half on wet beach. A forensic expert on the case called it abnormal. A body, he said, doesn't just end up there. Not without waves, not without current, not without something else happening. The coroner told the family there were no immediate signs of foul play. He made that statement based on a cursory look at the body. No blunt force trauma, he said. No stab wounds, no bullet wounds, no deep gouges. He identified Nolan based on physical appearance and description.
Very professional, well-spoken, soft-spoken as well. And, basically said that, they found a body. And from initial appearance, he identified him as Nolan. He did want to take a DNA swab or get a DNA sample from the family just for, further confirmation and for, I guess, record keeping, whatever it was. But then he also, she asked about the condition and he went into, there were no immediate signs of foul play. Okay. To me, again, my opinion in hearing this is, no signs of blunt force trauma, or any, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, any, signs of foul play. What we would consider that.
But here is the problem. The family was told that dental records had to be used to confirm the ID. If visual identification was possible, why did they need dental records? If the body was in good enough condition to identify by sight, why couldn't they use fingerprints?
Nancy, usually dental records are used when other forms of identification cannot be utilized. So the first thing that we always try to do is to visually identify somebody. And if you have family there or friends or an ID, something to reference to visually identify the person, then that is the first step. So just getting a general idea of who they are. Then you want to move to a scientific form of identification. And that is something based on a scientific discipline. So there is proof that it is the person when it goes to court or additional questions are asked later. Your first form of scientific identification is fingerprints. That's always going to be the easiest and fastest. And if he had an ID or driver's license, then there should be a fingerprint on file to be able to identify this person rather quickly. However, in this case, if he had been deceased for a day or two before he was found, then forms of scientific identification like fingerprints or even like a visual identification may not necessarily be available. So in those scenarios, then you move to alternate forms of identification like dental records. So that you would have to get the person's dental records from when they were alive to compare them against dental records taken when they're deceased at the autopsy. The last form of identification that's used, which is the most expensive and most time-consuming, would be DNA. However, if you're going to take this case to court and it's going to be tried like a homicide, then you would probably want to use a form of identification like DNA because it's much more solid. You can verify with percentages how likely it is that the person is who you believe they are. So that's why dental records were most likely used in this case versus something simple and fast like fingerprints or visual identification.
The mother sat in that conference room with her husband, with Josh Gil, with the coroner. She asked questions. She wanted to know what had happened to her son. The coroner told her there were no signs of foul play, but he also told her that DNA would be collected. He told her that Nolan would be going to the crime lab for a full autopsy. He told her the process. He did not tell her that the red spot on the back of Nolan's head might be more than decomposition.
Sure.
You're telling me that from a cursory look at Nolan Wells's body, there was no sign of foul play, such as a stab wound or a bullet wound or bruises, deep gouges on the head. That, in my experience, having tried so many homicide cases, I cannot count them, is what you get from a cursory look at a body. Would you agree?
So, correct. I'm not a medical examiner nor a coroner. I have gathered information and heard multiple people speak on that, especially about
The phrase that echoes through this case is simple, repeated, undeniable. They lied to me. Not yelled, not screamed. Said quietly in the aftermath, when a mother realizes that the people who were supposed to tell her the truth have been hiding something. They lied to me. About what they saw. About what they knew. About what they were willing to admit. The forensic expert questioned the entire narrative. He pointed out that in a drowning case, a body stays where it went under. It doesn't wash up on shore unless there is current, unless there is wave action, unless something moves it. And even if it does wash up, it doesn't decompose so quickly that visual identification is impossible. If the body was so decomposed that they couldn't identify Nolan visually, then how could the coroner rule out foul play on a first look? How could he say there were no signs of trauma when he hadn't even dissected the throat to check for subcutaneous bruising?
He's not out in the water, Jeff Gentry. What does that mean, if anything?
That's really abnormal. I would have a ton of questions in that case. I would wonder if there's no waves, no strong current, why is that body up on a shore? How did it get there? And just like when we're looking at blood evidence or other forms of evidence, if something is in a certain position within a scene, you have to question how it got there. I have investigated a lot of deaths, bodies in canals, rivers, lakes, large bodies of water, never really near the ocean, to where you would expect somebody to wash up to shore. But in these cases, even though there's strong current, waves, large bodies of water, I've never really seen bodies up on a shore, especially up out of the water enough to where they could decompose significantly to where they can't be identified or can't be fingerprinted. So that would be a very big question that I would have in this case is, with the absence of waves, with the absence of a strong current, how in the world did this 19-year-old man end up on shore out of the water?
The coroner's confidence, Josh Gil noted, was high. He was sure it was Nolan, but he still wanted dental records. He still wanted DNA, professional courtesy, perhaps. Or perhaps something else. Perhaps the reason Christine Elmore hired an attorney and a secondary forensic pathologist within days of her son's death was because she already knew. She knew that what she was being told did not match what she saw. She saw her son's body. She saw the red spot. And she knew that no one was telling her the whole truth. The ticking clock moment arrives when you realize that this case is not just about what happened on Horn Island. It is about what happens after. It is about a mother who is told one thing by the coroner but sees something else with her own eyes. It is about a system that investigates itself and finds itself blameless. It is about the gap between what is said and what is known. How long does a mother have to wait before someone tells her the truth about her son? And what does it say about the investigation when the only person asking that question is the one who gave birth to him? The county where Nolan Wells lived does not have a history of unexplained deaths on its beaches. This is not a place where bodies wash up without explanation. And yet, a 19-year-old man was found on the shore, partially on wet sand, his body decomposed enough that dental records were required for identification, but not so decomposed that the coroner could rule out foul play within minutes. The contradictions are not a sign of a thorough investigation. They are a sign of something else entirely. The unanswered question at the center of this case is one we keep coming back to. If a mother can look at her son's body and know something is wrong, why can't the professionals who examined it admit the same? And if the coroner was confident enough to identify Nolan by sight, why did he need dental records to prove it? The court documents and coroner's reports from this case are part of the public record. Search the Jackson County Coroner's files. Read the initial findings. Look at the timeline. Look at what has, and has not, been released. Then ask yourself one question in the comments. If you were that mother, sitting on the gravel in that parking lot, would you accept what you were told? Or would you keep asking until someone told you the truth? If this story taught you something, then like, share, and subscribe to Crime Nest Media. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive. Because the evidence is always there. The question is whether anyone is willing to follow it all the way to the end.